Good Saturday morning, everyone. We want to get right to this Fox News alert now. While you were sleeping, a day of calm, well, that ended. A storm erupting in Ferguson, Missouri overnight while you were sleeping. Police firing tear gas at demonstrators in the street.
And anger over the death of unarmed black teen Michael Brown boiling over. Looters ransacking stores, including the same convenience store that we just learned Brown is accused of robbing the day he was killed.
Chief of Police releasing this surveillance footage that allegedly shows Brown stealing cigars and roughing up the store manager just minutes before he died in a confrontation with police. Released at the same time the name of the officer who killed him. His name is Darren Wilson.
What are you saying, Chief? Did he know that he was a suspect in a case, or did he not know?
No, he didn't. He was walking.
It had nothing to do with the stop.
It had nothing to do with stop.
At this point, why did he stop Michael Brown?
Because they were walking down the middle of the street blocking traffic.
Police now changing the story and saying, in fact, the policeman saw cigars in Brown's hand. Either way, Brown's family and attorneys say the police chief is devious in his timing.
The family feels that that was strategic. They think it was aimed at denigrating their son. It was a character assassination attempt. That is pretty much the sentiments of everyone that I've discussed. They think the timing is suspect.
He wasn't causing any harm to nobody.
Meanwhile, Dorian Johnson, who was with Brown during the store robbery, says he saw the whole thing.
Rod Wheeler is a Fox News contributor and former D.C. homicide detective. He joins us live from Ferguson. Rod, you were there overnight on the ground. You were literally there in the middle of all that chaos. What did you see?
Well, let me just kind of set the stage and kind of show the viewers exactly where we are now in comparison to where everything was happening last night. Now, right now, we're at the 8700 block of West Flosson Street. Now, if 3 blocks back is about the 9400 block, and that's where I was last night. They call that ground zero here, and that's where thousands of people was located at the Quick Mart or the Quick Trip, and that's the one that burned down. Now, all of these people was out there last night, and I didn't see any police officers initially last night, and it had to be thousands of people out there. There was a lot of loud talking. There was a lot of sign and protesting and things like that. But again, there was no police. So right around 1 o'clock in the morning last night, guys, and I was right in the heart of it, you started seeing people throwing rocks and throwing bottles, and it was really becoming extremely dangerous. And of course, I'm looking for more and more police. Eventually, around 1:30 a.m., the police did roll in. They started firing CS gas, and at that point, I didn't have a gas mask, so I had to obviously get out of the area. But it was very, very dangerous. You could hear a lot of noise, sounds like gunshots. Don't know if anybody was shot, but it was totally chaotic. And the other thing I do want to mention is that a lot of the police officers here now, you don't see the riot gear that they really need to have on now when you look at that situation last night.
You know, Rod, it's just interesting. You said they got there at 1:30 in the morning. I mean, this has been a very volatile situation. You were a D.C. homicide detective for many years. What do you think is the breakdown here? Where's the breakdown happening? Is it the police? Is it local officials just not making decisions? What's happening?
Well, you know, I've been trying to figure that out, and here's what I honestly believe. And I think, you know what, this is why the police officers are really despondent in this community today. I can tell you that. I spoke with several officers last night and some this morning. They're very despondent because it appears as though some politicians are calling the shots, not police officers, not police leadership. The police department here in Ferguson is not communicating with the state police. There's a lot of animosity between Ferguson and the state police, and it's really caused a major chaotic scene.
So, Rod, there's so much speculation from the president on down about what happened between the man who died and the officer who apparently shot him. What do we actually know?
You know, what we know is that there was some type of an altercation at the store, the retail store, where the cigarillos were stolen, the cigars were stolen. You know, Mike went into that store with Dorian. They stole these cigarillos. They pushed this guy. We know that. We see it on the video. Now, here's where the breakdown in this entire case comes, guys. The police officer, who I think his name is Wilson, Darian Wilson, he spotted these two individuals walking in the middle of the street. This is Canfield Drive. Now, Canfield Drive I was over there yesterday night. It's only about 2 blocks away from here. And he approached them in his police car. Some kind of words were expressed between Mike and the police officer. A shot rang out in that car. Now, that has not been confirmed yet. But many of the witnesses say that a gunshot rang out while the police officer was in the car. Mike took off running. Police officer gets out of his car, and he continues to fire shots, and then that's when the young man was killed. Now, a lot of the forensic examination is going to be critical and crucial in this case, and that's why I can't wait until the police department release the autopsy report, because that's going to have a lot of that vital information in it.
All right, Rod Wilson.
Thanks.
Rod Wheeler, I'm sorry, joining us this morning on the ground there in Ferguson, Missouri. Thanks, Rod.
You know, something I think is important to keep in mind is that Ferguson, Missouri is a little town. You know, it's outside of St. Louis, but it's a little town, and these are towns that are not used to, first of all, you know, massive amounts of television and media coming in there and, you know, having to make decisions on the fly, but also having to make decisions that will have repercussions across the country and possibly even the world. I mean, we're hearing about, you know, from Iran. You know, you got to keep that in mind. I feel like these, you know, the state really needs to step in on this one.
Well, the state, I mean, the governor, Jay Nixon, Democrat, has been basically orchestrating this from the State House, sort of amazingly. I think something that a lot of people have been surprised by, no matter where your sympathies are in all this, and I'm totally appalled by the looting, I have to say, disgusted by it, is the degree to which a lot of cops now around the country look like soldiers.
Right.
And why does a town of this size have an armored personnel carrier? And why do they have machine guns? And what happened exactly that our cops look like, you know, look like this Delta Force?
Why is because it dates back to the Reagan era. At the end of the Reagan era, when there was an Army surplus program that basically unfolded. So local communities, whatever was left over from the Pentagon, would flow into these local communities, equipment. And in fact, the front page of the New York Times this morning has a story about the types of pieces of equipment that are going to these local police departments: mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles, Casper armored vehicles, Sea King helicopters, armored personnel carriers. And here are some of the numbers. Take a look at this. More than 860 armored vehicles going to local police departments, more than 93,000 machine guns, 533 aircraft, 45,000 pieces of night vision equipment. Look, we can have a healthy debate as to whether or not, you know, larger cities like New York City and Seattle maybe need these things in the case of...
Really? They need mine-resistant vehicles? Look, I support the cops completely, and I'm totally for law and order. But who's the enemy here? Us.
Well, you're making...
this is scary.
So
I mean,
you're saying it looks militaristic, and that is somehow...
It is militaristic.
It is militaristic, and it's being used against the population. And why would conservatives defend this? A lot of conservatives, like me, are reflexively pro-cop, and I am certainly reflexively pro-cop. Always have been, always will be. But this is not what small government conservatives should be for. This is really creepy.
No, but I believe like community policing has its roots in conservatism. James Wilson, I believe, was a big proponent of community policing.
He invented it.
You know, integrating into the community and the broken window policy and knowing your police officers and having a communication with them, the friendly police officer in the neighborhood. And now we see riot gear and bulletproof vests and armored personnel carriers. I find it very troubling. What I also find troubling...
Molotov cocktails coming from the other side.
Yes, that's true. But then with all this gear and equipment, Rod Wheeler was just saying, and thousands of cops on the scene, that nobody was preventing the looting of the liquor store, of the beauty supply store. If police exist for any reason, it's fundamentally to preserve civic order, to prevent lunacy like this from taking place.
Well,
if they can't do that, then what's the point?
Isn't it boys with toys sometimes, too? I mean, it's the hall monitor syndrome sometimes. You get a guy in a small-town police department, and you get some little domestic disturbance, which is reported in these stories, and, you know, the hall monitor syndrome, he gets in an armored personnel carrier.
Right.
Like the woman, like the Keene Pumpkin Festival up in New Hampshire. Did you hear about this? The Keene Pumpkin Festival, a nice little festival where old ladies go and get apple cider. An armored personnel carrier needs to be at the Keene Pumpkin Festival in New Hampshire because you're worried about grandma taking too much apple cider.
Well, you've got 4 Democrats who are calling for this, you know, really a bill to look at the this extensive sort of, I guess, militarization, as you can say, of local community
police. Well, they've pushed it, so they've got a lot to apologize.
Let me just say this. What I find most troubling, because I really can't stand the size of the defense budget, and I say it occasionally here on the show, one third of all of these pieces of equipment were never used in Iraq and Afghanistan. 2 wars we were fighting. 1/3 of the equipment set unused. That's why I went to these local police departments.
Yeah. I don't have a problem when this stuff is used against Islamic extremists or people in other countries. Just don't use it against our people.
All right, let us
taxpayer
know what you
dollars
think
paying
about this.
billions just sitting there collecting dust.
Email us, because we know these guys have a lot to say about it. We know you do too.
We have 4 more hours to fill. We'll do it.
We'll talk about it again. All right, another Fox News alert while you were sleeping. U.S. Air